Welcome to our program. Our today's guest is Annabelle Nielsen and Kenn Munk. Can you introduce yourself a little?
Hi, I'm Annabelle and I'm originally from Germany, but I lived in England for a very long time, where I did my entire education and worked and lived, and where I also met Kenn. And yeah, we decided to work together, I think, and it's going strong. We're quite happy doing that. And it's come as a surprise to us, I think, at the beginning. It was completely by coincidence.
Yeah, so we formed a secret club together,
yeah.
Which isn't really a club, and it's not really secret either. It's just a name, and as the name implies, it's all about playing. So we're playing with everything we can get our hands on.
And you are both, you are a Kunstler and illustrator. You are educated at graphic design,
That's right.
Yeah.
So you found this that you can play with art forms. That's also the part of the concept, is it?
Absolutely. I think we can play to our strength individually, but when we work together, something's happening. It seems like, I think on my own I couldn't do the projects that I do together with Kenn. It's when we work together, something happens, and then we get other ideas, and there's a different kind of potential how we can develop things, and it's really cool because it's a lot of fun as well.
And I also think the whole graphic design and illustration thing that's linked to play, because I think a lot of how you think when you design something or you come up with new illustrations or new ideas for designs is very close to the way you play, actually. So you're exploring new worlds in your mind, and that's the kind of play we really like, sort of imagination and curiosity.
Sometimes I think it starts as a concept. So we get an idea where we think, oh, we should be working with this or in that particular place. And then we're also very strongly visually inspired by things. So then it's maybe about colors and forms and shapes and things that we would like to incorporate. And then things come together and take shape. So materials are often like really important because they can inspire us by the qualities they have, and we work a lot with found materials as well, and they kind of found materials come with a story, and storytelling I think is also a big part in our work.
Yeah, and I think stories in general is a big part of what we do. We don't sort of tell traditional stories, but maybe we hint at them, and then the kids or the grown-ups who play with us, because it is for everyone really, they sort of develop stories further.
London, where it all started, because you were studying there and you met Kenn, and this what you already said, that you found each other, and first it was a friendship that you got inspired and you become partners in making some projects, but then you also become partners in your life, and you created a secret club that was started in 2009 in London. And then you decided to come back to Aarhus. Why?
Yeah.
The reason we moved to Denmark was, I think, largely to do with the fact that we got a son. And
what is your son's name?
His name is Mio.
Yeah, could you tell us the story behind the name? Because there is a story.
Yeah, there's actually two stories.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to start with the story.
When I lived in London, I also taught at university. So I had a job at Camberwell College of Arts for a couple of years, and it was really lovely. So I taught on their BA illustration program. And I had some wonderful international students there as well, and one of them was a Japanese girl called Mio. And I was really enchanted by that name, and I thought it's a fantastic name for a girl as well, because it seems so open to whether it's a boy or girl. But then, of course, there's also this very famous story by Astrid Lindgren, the Swedish writer. And I've always been really fond of her stories since I was a child, so I had lots of her stories. Like she wrote Pippi Longstocking, she wrote The Kids from Bullerbø and many others. But Mio min Mio, the Scandinavian title, is also a very, very beautiful story. Quite sad, in some aspects, but also very inspiring. And then when we found out that we're going to have a little son, we thought, oh, what the hell, we just call him Mio. It fits perfectly. Whether girl or boy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we weren't so sure to begin with, but sometimes you don't know the name until you meet the person, which is quite fun.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think not a lot of people know that it's a girl's name in Japan, so he doesn't get teased with that.
Yeah. And it's also like nowadays very modern, that it's like this gender equality. So it's like in this...
I heard about that. I listened to a podcast, I think last night, and someone said he had picked a name for his child that was sort of gender neutral because of how the way we are moving now as sort of as a global culture and probably more Western culture in terms of gender and gender identification. So that's something people are starting to consider when naming their child.
We can also mention that, for example, you were living in London and Winnie the Pooh in London, it's a girl.
Is it?
Yes, and the rest of the world we know it as a male.
Yeah.
Really?
That really changed the story, isn't it?
But
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
But this is also this. How come for us is how can he be a girl?
Yeah.
But yes.
I don't think it changes it so much for me. I mean, but I grew up with robots and weird creatures as my role models. It doesn't matter so much to me whether the hero of the story is a boy or a girl.
But I remember when I was little, when I was growing up in Germany, we had this series for kids that was called Vicky und die Wikinger. And I was always convinced this was a little girl who hung out with the Vikings. And it was perfect. And many years later, somebody said, no, this is supposed to be a little boy. I said, no, it's a girl. Also had long hair, red-haired, and really feisty, and a fantastic little role model. But for me, it's clear it's a girl. I think when we met, we discovered that we like a lot of the same things, and that what inspired us was also common ground, sort of quirky things and things that are a little bit unusual, things that have an edge, things that come with an inherent story. So we were fascinated by a lot of the same things, but also each one of us has their own interests as well. But I think that is quite important. So when we did our first workshop together, actually, that was based on a on a misunderstanding, actually, because we were taking part in a little makers market in London, southeast London. And for some reason, we thought we were supposed to do a workshop. So we came up with a workshop concept that was all about Arctic snow and ice, and it was July. So it was in the middle of summer, and then we built this flat-packed scenery that we built up on a table, and we offered a mask-making workshops and a beard-making workshops for children. And it was a big hit, and we were surprised by it. Because people took to it so well, and there was so much interest. And then we thought, oh, workshops, we can think up a whole lot of things here. And I think that's how we got into working together. So it wasn't a conscious decision in the first place. It was sort of more like, oh, we want to be at that market, we want to do something fun. And then suddenly that Arctic landscape popped into our head. Yeah,
it turned out that kids weren't that interested in sort of porcelain bowls and stuff, and so they came to our place.
This started from this project, but actually, and that first time you did it in July, it was original, but you did this also here in Aarhus in winter.
Yeah. Yes.
What was it about when you had real snow? What can you do with snow?
Yeah.
Yes, what can you do with snow? You can do a lot of things, and even children don't really do all the stuff you can do with snow. It's quite an amazing material, and I don't remember how we came up with it, but we got this idea for a project that we call Snefest in Danish, or Snowfest. And the idea is that whenever it snows, we turn a park or an area in Aarhus into a sculpture park that will only last one day, because as much fun as it is to build something with snow, it's equally much fun to destroy something that someone else has built with snow. So these things don't last. But yeah, it's a how can I say it? It's a salute or homage to a weird Italian art movement from the 60s that was called arte povera. If anyone speaks Italian, then they're...
Mi dispiace, mi non parlo italiano.
Arte povera. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that in itself is also poor art. But arte povera means poor art. And they started using sort of rubbish materials like old wood and mud.
Because
and
you
rope.
also use Genbruk materials to this.
Exactly.
You were building like, I saw, for example, you made a tool from Genbruk materials that you painted, and you make a unicorn from ice.
All the tools for Snefest from old furniture pieces that we find in the streets of Aarhus. So we are foraging materials basically all the time. And for Snefest, what we thought was it would be so nice to be able to have a saw where you can saw a block of snow over, or you can have some sort of a drill where you can make fun patterns with that particular tool. And then we also have a mold where when you put four sides together to form sort of a block mold, you can make a really nice stand for sculptures, and that's probably where you see the unicorn, because we placed it on top so like that you elevate it.
Yeah, it was like
exactly. It's I mean, we're playing with a lot of things there. We're also playing with sort of what is a real sculpture, and a real sculpture has to be on a plinth and look proper. It can't just be a snow
And in a way,
thing.
I think we're poking a little bit of fun at art as well, because it's about presentation. As soon as you put an object into a particular space, be that four white walls, you look at it differently. And I think in Snefest, when we put something on a pedestal, you will look at it differently. So you can elevate a whole lot of small things like a snowball or something quite simple to an art status, and it works. People look at it, and they're having fun.
And it's a fun thing to play with. Everything sort of ties back to this arte povera idea, because snow is, of course, also free, and it's an amazing material because grown-ups hate it. Because it disrupts their day. They have to shovel it first, and it's difficult to drive anywhere. And kids love it. Grown-ups love it too, but only if they are with kids or with other grown-ups that don't have to go to work. And it's just fun, and you can talk about these things like how you sort of cast and mold stuff. You can talk to the kids about how their toys have been made, how they've been made in a mold as well. And you can talk about all sorts of art movements and, of course, also how cold your feet are.
And you can show that you can actually play with everything, like you are teaching. Snow, Genbruk materials, use your imagination, create something new. That's a beautiful idea. And also we made a program about one of your sculpture that it's called, that become a playground, is it? And it's a secret playground for introvert kids.
Yes.
Could you tell us more about this project?
Yeah, we call it the Introvert Playground. And we made it as a response to how society, everything in society is, in Western society at least, is very extrovert focused. People don't sit in private little offices anymore. They sit in open space. There's a lot of group projects in school, and there's sort of a lot of expectation.
It's outspoken and confident all the time, and also very social in that sense that you will prefer to do things with other people all the time rather than be by yourself every now and then. And I think we look at that slightly differently, don't we?
Yeah, to continue what I said, there's the expectation that you have to be able to come up with your ideas when you're working with other people. And some children, some grown-ups, they are better if they just sit quietly and think of ideas, and then they can talk to them later. So it's sort of, I don't think, it's not a problem, it's just something we should be aware of. I fear a little bit that being introvert is going to become a diagnosis at some point, where you say, oh no, you need treatment because you just like to sit by yourself. And it's often seen as a negative, because you see a child that sits quietly in a corner all by himself or herself, and you think, oh no, that child is lonely, and maybe the child just wants to be alone.
And they say, come out from the shell. That
Oh,
they treat it like you are in the shell.
so
You have to go up and perform to the world.
Yeah.
What is actually not, like you said, there are many benefits of this, that kids can sit and all this mind, the secret world that they have in their mind. It's beautiful.
Absolutely, and there's definitely a difference between being shy and being an introvert. It happens also that some introverts are shy, but it's not the same thing, because I think enjoying your own company is also quite healthy, especially when you're growing up, because you develop your imagination and your creativity. And we're coming back to Astrid Lindgren, actually. She once wrote that it's very important to be bored every now and then, because only when you're bored you will find a solution to become active and find something that's worth doing. So a lot of the source of creativity is actually sort of initial boredom, or a kind of frustration with not knowing what to do with yourself. And I think that's really important for kids to learn by themselves, and then find strategies how they can entertain themselves.
And I think it also comes back to this creativity, where that comes from, because I mentioned it in the beginning, that it's about imagination and curiosity. Those are the only two things you need to be creative, and that is stuff that introverts play with a lot, because they go through all kinds of scenarios in their mind. If an introvert walks through town, they imagine all kinds of things. Houses have faces, and do they have bodies underneath, and could they be robots and rise up, and it's an invisible kind of play. You can't see it, but all of this is happening inside.
It's like
their
Leonard
mind.
Cohen saying, in my secret world.
Exactly, you get this
so many happening inside.
There's an amazing world in here.
Yeah, and it's beautiful that you are showing that it's worth to teach kids, like you said. Let them be bored, because also from a psychological point of view, it's proven that kids need, nowadays we are all bombarded with all this information, with IT, technology, that we don't have time to be bored. We don't have time to be alone. Even as an adults, we are busy with work, we are busy with our families, and how beneficial it is to be sometimes on your own, like even to think, process this all information that we get, and think up, like you said beautifully, that find what is there for you.
Yeah, I thought about something, and that is the way we watch TV series now, because in our childhoods it was sort of you had to wait a week for the next episode, and in the meantime you sort of dreamt up what can happen now, how are they gonna, they were hanging at the edge of a cliff, how are they gonna get out of that situation, what's gonna happen, and now you can get the answer immediately. You can you don't have to sort of make your own. It's
like we don't have to wait, we get this fast satisfaction.
Yes.
But sometimes it's worth to wait, like you say. Then you have to use your imagination, you have to worry about your hero.
Yeah, and if you come up with a better story than the TV people do, then, no offense to TV people, then that's just
example,
amazing.
Even the book is, for me, the book is always better than any movie, because you create these characters.
It's the imagination again, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's...
Yeah, but the introvert playground is not meant just for introvert kids, because we think it's as important for extrovert kids to sit quietly and dream and be a little bit bored as it is for introvert kids to do active
because we made this program about your playground using my own twins, which are totally not introverts. So they had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looked like they did. I liked how they looked out, and then they had the mustache on, and they're climbing inside and looking at all the things.
Yeah. So it's working. Yeah. Also, I can confirm, also for extrovert kids.
Excellent.
Yeah. So they didn't
mission accomplished. No, they just love it. That was really so interesting for them, and even I think that many kids would like to have it at their home, just to hide and be there in their own world.
And there is, of course, also a lot of overlap. It's not like introvert kids and extrovert kids.
Exactly.
There are some overlaps, and sometimes your mood changes. Sometimes you just, as an extrovert, you want to be alone, and as an introvert, you seek the company of others.
I think it's good to keep this balance.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you have got some benefits from being a little, sometimes extrovert, you need to be extrovert.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to find this time for our own.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Something about also the moustache and the mask
Yeah,
things.
tell us about this.
'Cause
But I also want
Yeah.
you to tell me what are the symbols in this bird house? Because you got this bird there, sausages in the stomach.
So you better explain that.
The bird at the top, when you look up, is a beautiful Danish lullaby that I also sung to Mio when he wouldn't sleep as a little boy. And it's called Bjerg i skoven, where you sing about this a branch on a tree on the mountain in the woods, and then the next verse there's a leaf on the branch, so you sort of keep adding these things, and the song gets longer and longer and longer. And the idea is that it becomes a little bit dull, and the child then falls asleep. But that doesn't always
like
work.
A never-ending story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
and
this
a lot
this
of
song,
repetition,
it
because you have to go through the same chain of things again and again.
This song has an ending, but if the child doesn't sleep at the ending, you have to come up with new bits that can happen. So it's based on that, and it's quite beautiful and slow, and maybe it's the perfect introvert song. So yeah, that's that lullaby in the top of the tree. Sawn out of plate, so it's a visualization. Each verse is a plate, and then it ends with a sausage, because
and that's our ending, our version.
yeah, we changed it a little bit.
You were hungry making it?
No, sausages are they're a fun symbol. They are a strange thing in a way, and they're visually fun, and they're always a little bit dubious. You don't really know what's inside sausages. You don't trust when it says contains 70% meat. It's like, what's the rest, and what's your definition of meat?
But you know what? It's also because in Denmark you get these red ones, and I find them really weird. It's like, how do you want to eat something that's so bright red? It's difficult for me. So it becomes this sort of symbol of something. It's more of an object than food when I look at it.
It is almost
and that fits
a
into our universe quite often.
Food. And you have it in the buses when they warn you not to eat on the buses. It's a picture of two sausages.
What about the symbol of the moustache?
These things are to dress up. And
you got a wonderful beard.
And a lot of our work is inspired by sort of old fairgrounds and sort of Victorian fairgrounds, and these seaside things where you go to the coast, and then you can be either Marilyn Monroe if you're a woman, or a big muscly strong man if you're a man. And we wanted to play with that, and I think it's also something. It is a very slight sort of commentary on what it is to be introvert, because this is something you would think an introvert wouldn't like to do. But they play a role, they become something else, and they sort of play to the people outside.
I think that they also can hide a little.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's something else, and then they can be loud and they can yell.
Yeah, but that's like you get your extra comfort zone.
Yes.
Because you're not showing your whole
face. You're not yourself.
Yeah, you're like, like even with your sculpture that you also had this, that my kids could look at. And, they were like, you are protected, you are in this, like, your shell, but you can go to the world on your terms. Yeah. Like, you decide who you want to play now.
When you're the moustache man, you can say whatever you want.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
What about the language? Because language, this all games with language is important for you. Can you tell us more about meaning of the language?
Definitely. I think there's one reason is that in our little family, we speak 3 languages, and we shift quite a lot from one to the other, and it's sort of what word comes first to your mind when you talk, and sometimes we mix it all up. But it's also that language is such a rich source. So there's poetry in every language, I think. How you say things, how you phrase it. Certain words are really just beautifully gorgeous when you listen to their sound and how you write them. And I think in the languages we share, so we speak Danish, English and German, we have found that there's a very particular poetry in Danish, but then there's also one in German and in English. And some things you can say better in one language than in the other, and some things don't translate as well or not with the same poetry. And then it's sort of like this game, how would you phrase it then in the other language to have the same feeling or the same atmosphere that you want to convey? And it's fascinating. I love language. I think.
The poetry in each language is a different one.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why it's a little bit sad when you see so much that's just translated into English because it sounds cool.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that whole street food thing, I think they're so missing a trick, because gademad would be an amazing way to say street food in Danish. Also because it's almost like food, because it's bleh.
You have to use your tongue.
Yeah.
But this is a good way to tell about your project that you made at Brabrandstein.
Yes, because that's also about food.
Yes,
And
could you tell
language,
us?
actually.
And language.
Exactly.
Could you tell us what is it about?
Yeah. There's a section of Brabrandstein where when you come from the city and you cross the first bridge, and it goes right to the crossing med Søren Frichsvej. That stretch has a very rich plant life, and you can forage actually quite a lot of herbs, plants to use in other recipes, and also fruit in the wild. So we have worked together with Smag på Aarhus to sort of show people what there is available in the different seasons and what they can pick themselves, and then they can find recipes on Smag på Aarhus website to then cook this food. And it has this sort of teaching element to it that we would like to sort of tell people about this, what they can find in their city, and that it's quite exciting, and how they can become creative with it. But it's also how we wanted to do it, and we've sewn out shapes and made signs and hand painted them. And it's also the language we use, that we're not saying, oh, now it's apples, and then we write apples, but that the language tries to be sort of a bit more personal in a way.
Yeah, it's very much inspired by Alice in Wonderland with the eat me and drink me.
Exactly.
That was sort of especially the first year, and then the second year we've done it 1.5 years. So sort of the second year we did. It was very much inspired by supermarkets, sort of now and coming soon, and sort of this sensational, but those two things mixed, and the fact that it's handwritten signs makes it also a little bit more old-fashioned, and the supermarket language is I wouldn't say naive, but simpler. It's not trying to be cool. Like, we had given that path a voice, which was a really, really nice way to say something. So yeah, that
was a very good project. And
it was a very nice project.
I also I read that you like to play, and there is this difference, especially in Danish, between spiel and lege. Could you tell us what is the difference?
The difference is that spil is to play a game or
competitive.
Yes, there's a goal. And there isn't in lege. There's no goal in lege.
Options.
Yeah, you can win or you can lose, or maybe you don't finish the game.
Lege, it's about that you are allowed to change the rules whenever you want to.
You can do anything. You don't have to fulfill any goals. You don't have to fight. In lege, it's open-ended. It ends when it's no more fun, or it becomes something else. And to be able to play games or sports well, you need sort of skill sometimes, and luck sometimes, and what's it called? Imagination.
And thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
It was lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.